क्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। ॐ सिन्दूरारुणविग्रहां त्रिनयनां माणिक्यमौलिस्फुरत्तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमापीनवक्षोरुहां पाणिभ्यां मलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थ रक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् परामम्बिकाम्। ध्यायेन्नित्यं महेशं रजतगिरिनिभं चारुचन्द्रावतंसं रत्नाकल्पोज्ज्वलाङ्गं परशुमृगवराभीतिहस्तं प्रसन्नं पद्मासीनं समन्तात् स्तुतमवरगणैः व्याघ्रकृत्तिं वसानं विश्वाज्यं विश्वबीजं निखिलभयहरं पञ्चवक्त्रं त्रिनेत्रम् नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर्गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्।
धृतराष्ट्रोवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किं कुर्वत संजय। श्रीभगवानुवाच क्लैब्यमास्मकमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्तोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप। अर्जुनोवाच मदनुग्रहाय परमं गुह्यमध्यात्मसंज्ञितं यत्त्वयोक्तं वचस्तेन मोहोऽयं विगतो मम। मन्यसे यदि तच्छक्यं मया द्रष्टुमिति प्रभो योगेश्वर ततो मे त्वं दर्शयात्मानमव्ययम्। श्री भगवान उवाच न तु मां शक्यसे द्रष्टुम् अनेनैव स्वचक्षुषा दिव्यं ददामि ते चक्षुः पश्य मे योगमैश्वरम्। संजय उवाच एवमुक्त्वा ततो राजन् महायोगेश्वरो हरिः दर्शयामास पार्थाय परमं रूपमैश्वरम्। दिवि सूर्यसहस्रस्य भवेद्युगपदुत्थिता यदि भासदृशी सा स्याद् भासस्तस्य महात्मनः। ततः स विस्मयाविष्टो हृष्टरोमा धनञ्जयः प्रणम्य शिरसा देवं कृताञ्जलिर्भाषत। अर्जुन उवाच त्वमक्षरं परमं वेदितव्यं त्वमस्य विश्वस्य परं निधानम् त्वमव्ययः शाश्वतधर्मगोप्ता सनातनस्तं पुरुषो मतो मे। अनादिमध्यान्तमनन्तवीर्यम् अनन्तबाहुं शशिसूर्यनेत्रम् पश्यामि त्वां दीप्तहुताशवक्त्रम् स्वतेजसा विश्वमिदं तपन्तम् द्यावा पृथिव्योरिदमन्तरं हि व्याप्तं त्वयैकेन दिशश्च सर्वाः दृष्ट्वाद्भुतं रूपमुग्रं तवेदं लोकत्रयं प्रव्यथितं महात्मन्.
Thank you, Shalabh. Very nice. Acha. So, we are starting a new chapter, right? Is that
Yes, Dr. Shankar, chapter 15.
15? पञ्चदशोऽध्यायः यस्मात् मद् अधीनं कर्मिणां कर्मफलं ज्ञानिनां च ज्ञानफलम् अतः भक्तियोगेन मां ये सेवन्ते ते मम प्रसादात् ज्ञानप्राप्तिक्रमेण गुणातीताः मोक्षं गच्छन्ति. Because I control the fruits of works of those who do them, karmanam karmaphalam, mad adinam, under my control. Because of that, yasmat, because the fruits of the works of those who do works are under my control, and because the fruits of the knower's knowledge, jnaninam cha jnanaphalam, and ataha bhakti yogena, those who devote themselves to me, conforming to the yoga of devotion, mam ye sevante, those who serve me, mama prasadat, by my grace, jnana prapti kramena, through knowledge, won by my grace, gunatitaha, they transcend the constituents of prakriti, moksham gachanti. So this is important, and this is the power of the commentary that Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya says, bhakti, devotion to the Lord, yields the fruit of liberation. How? Because by his grace, knowledge is gained. Jnana prapti kramena. Knowledge is gained both by the jnanarthis and by the bhakt, the true bhakt. Right? What is the fast, expedient route is that by devotion to the Lord, through the Lord's grace, jnanam is attained. Always jnanam is attained through Lord's grace only. But in the beginning, sometimes people are classified as attracted by knowledge or attracted by devotion, right? Without the grace of the Lord, knowledge is not going to dawn. Right? So this Bhagavan is making clear. Kimu vaktavyam atmanah tattvameva samyak vijanantah iti. Where is the need then to speak of those who have mastered the truth of the self? Therefore, the Lord, though unasked by Arjuna, seeking to set forth the truth about himself, uttered the following verses of this chapter. In the first place, to generate detachment, he describes, employing the metaphor of the tree, the nature of empirical life. For only one detached from empirical life is competent to grasp the truth about the Lord, none else. Now, this vairagyam is poorly translated as detachment. There is actually no English translation for the word vairagya. Dispassion comes somewhat close, but detachment gives the wrong meaning altogether. The vairagya is not detached as disconnected at all. That's completely wrong misinterpretation of using the wrong language with the wrong words, inadequate words for vairagya. So, as you know, if you want to know the true meaning of something, you should go to the source. So Tattva Bodha says, Drishta Anushravika Vishaya Vitrushnasya Sangya Vairagya. Drishta, the seen. Anushravika, heard. But by seen and heard are encompassed all objects of the senses. Obviously also smelt and tasted and seen and touched. Right? Drishta Anushravika is meant as an example that now you should understand not only seen and heard, but all five senses, right? Vitrishnasya, that is, Trishna is thirsting, clinging. Vitrishna is not clinging, not hankering, right? Vashikara, Vashikara is complete control of Sankhya. That is Vairagya. So, when sense objects are presented to the mind of a Vairagi, the Vairagi sees through them and does not hanker after them, right? And that is Vairagya, right? So, what it results in is that a sense that there has to be something more to this life than just the senses, right? If you look around you and you take anybody's life, you think of the daily life of any human being, wake up, and then whatever people do, they always never forget to eat, right? Everybody eats. Everybody defecates, because once you eat, you have to defecate. And those who can also fornicate. But this animals also do, right? If you look outside in the yard here, animals also eat, defecate, and fornicate. Yeah, it's true. Think about it. We have to be honest, right? So what distinguishes a man, a human being, from an animal? Actually, nothing. In today's modern world, I can't see any difference. They they do it in the open, you do it in a closed room. That's all. They are more transparent. We are not so transparent, right? So, of course, I'm saying that with a somewhat humorous twist. But the point is, it is to spark in us the thinking: what is the purpose of this life? Right? Why was I born? What am I doing here? What is everybody doing here? Right? Because this is the very same question that Nachiketa asked of Yama in Kathopanishad. I mean, just stop for a moment and think. 108 billion humans have born and died. Okay? Is the record. Okay. We are also human beings, right? So what is going to be our fate? Same thing. In the whole time of the cosmos, another 100 years is nothing. Right? Think about it. So our time is limited. The Stoics have a beautiful saying. They say, memento mori. Remember death. Why? Not in some morbid fashion. It's not a morbid fascination. But the point is that most people who are animated with a purpose know that their time is limited, and therefore the time must be used wisely. Right? Animalistic activities are okay, but that will keep you only at the level of the animal. So every day there must be some sparking purpose. Right? What am I doing here? Right? Some people, as Bhagavan says, karmanam karma phalam, they betake themselves to works, right? And works are of two kinds, or you may say three kinds. Of course, in the Vedas, there is Vaidika karma, and there is Nishiddha karma, forbidden works, right? Within the approved works, there are Kamya works with desire, and those that too, the ones with selfish desire, and there are Nishkamya works, those done for the greater good, right? So definitely those humans who are engaging in works with the greater good in mind are definitely better than animals, right? Those who are trying to the betterment of people around them or animals around them or the environment, right? They are in some way trying to improve the physical, mental, or spiritual life of people around them. That immediately puts them on a higher plane than animals. Right? Okay. When it's informed by wisdom, that's a wonderful thing. Then, of course, there are those who want to know true knowledge, Brahma Vidya, Atma Gyan, Brahma Gyan. So, Jnani Nam Jnana Phalam. Right? And then among those are the ones who say that The fastest way, as Bhagavan has said, is through devotion to the Lord, through which I will do this. Right? So and now how does all that come? It comes about because unless one looks at the empirical life, so um, samsara swarupam, right? Samsara swarupam. So now I just gave you the example of 108 billion humans who have, and this one Nachiketa said, he said, men are born and they die like corn. If you live in a rural place, you will get used to the rhythm of the seasons. Right now, the corn is growing high. Right, in October it will be harvested. The combine will come. Right, that's what happens to humans also. No different. Right, one day, and the Christians have a metaphor for it: the grim reaper. He comes with a scythe. Right, same deal. So the question is, what is one going to do between the planting and the harvesting in that time? Correct. So now, of course, one may be, social service. Those things are great, as I said. But then sometimes this question arises. So what does our heritage, what does our scripture have to say about this? So that is where the notion of samsara comes in. Because an ordinary human being only remembers a little bit of this life. The ordinary human being remembers from the time memory is formed in this brain of this particular body, right? So if we have asked this question in satsang, how far back can you remember? Maybe 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 2 years. Nobody can remember before 2 years, right? Although science tells us, I was recently reading, and of course our rishis knew this well before, is that actually the fetus, the child in the fetus itself can appreciate sound, and learning starts in the fetus itself. Learning doesn't start only after birth, right? That's why in our tradition, to read the Ramcharitmanas or to read some holy books, the mother and father are encouraged to read, even while the child is in the fetus, because those good vibrations will inform the child, right? Child is sensitive, fetus is sensitive to vibrations, music, sound, right? So the point of all that is we remember only part. So then samsara is a foreign concept to the empiricist. But what our rishis have told us, and this can be also gained through the power of yoga, is that this life is only one in a succession of lives, right? The mind has occupied other bodies before. The mind will occupy other bodies in the future unless something is done in this life. So that then uncovers the purpose of life, right? So in the Sanatana Dharma tradition, the Purusharth, fourfold purpose of life: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So behavior, conduct, charanam, acharanam, acharam is the way to learn what is this dharma, what is the right way of living, through which then vidya dadati vinayam, vinayat yati patratam, patratvat dhanam apnoti, dhanat dharmam tadassukam. Vidya, knowledge, gives vinayam, humility. Through humility, one gains competence, patratam. Patratvat dhanam apnoti. Through competence, one earns wealth, not through illegal means. Right? So through one's competence, one earns wealth. That wealth, when spent on dharmic acts, which in the old days was planting trees, digging wells, etc., for the travelers, um, that gives sukham, true happiness. Right? When we do something for somebody else, we actually feel very, very deeply happy, much more than even when we satisfy ourselves. Okay? So that's something very peculiar about our human nature, is that when we help somebody else and we see the smile on their face, it gladdens our heart very deeply. Right? So that is a kind of dharma, dharma. So dharma, artha, definitely the acquisition of wealth so as to keep poverty away and to have enough, right? Um, to sustain the body and the family, etc., so that the higher pursuits can be attained. Wealth itself is not bad in Hinduism. It is not considered. It's a very legitimate goal of human life, artha. The question is with what intention it is acquired, how it is disbursed, and how much one thinks one needs. So kama moksha, kama then desire, prajananam, for progeny, right? And then all this purifies the mind and prepares it for this kind of discourse and study of the Bhagavad Gita, right? So then moksha, that is what this is essentially. That's what Bhagavan is saying here, right? He says moksham gachanti, gunatita. So very well. So samsara. Viraktasya hi samsarat bhagavat tattva jnane adhikarah na anyasya iti. So what Bhagavan is saying here is that only the one who has practiced vairagyam, right, is eligible. Actually, this adhikara has a special meaning because in Advaita Vedanta, there is the notion of who is an adhikari. And that is called sadhana chatushtaya, the four means. And they include vivekam, vairagyam, shatka sampattihi, and mumukshutvam. Vivekam is a discrimination, special kind of discrimination. Nitya nitya vastu vivekaha, knowing the difference between the eternal and the transient. Vairagyam, I already told you. Drishta anishravika vishayam, trishnasya, vashikara sangya, vairagyam. Shatka sampattihi, there are sixfold virtues. Shama iti. And then mumukshutvam, an intense desire for liberation. Right? So first one should know what one is trying to be liberated from. We have described a little bit of samsara. Then last few chapters, we have seen that the Purusha is bound to Prakriti by the handcuffs of the gunas. Right? And hence the Gunatita is the one who is able to transcend that. So, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, number 1, please.
Sri Bhagavan Uvacha ऊर्ध्वमूलमधःशाखम् अश्वत्थं प्राहुरव्ययम् छन्दांसि यस्य पर्णानि यस्तं वेद स वेदवित्.
Very beautiful. Urdhva Moolam, upward, with its root upwards. Moolam is root upwards. Adhaha is downward, Shakam, branches. So it's an upside down tree. Ashwatham, it's a fig tree. Prahuhu, they speak of. Avyayam, it's an unchanging, eternal fig tree. Chandansi, yasya parnani. Parna is leaf. Chandas are the Vedic meters. Anushtup bhrati pankti trishtup jagatya chandagamsi. Yes, tam veda sa vedavit. He who knows this tree, he knows the Vedas. So, what is this metaphor that Bhagavan is talking about? Urdhva moolam iti, urdhva moolam kalataha, sukshmatvat, time being the cause, subtler than time. Karanatvat, nityatvat, mahatvat cha uchyate. Brahman, the unmanifest, who is endowed with the power of Maya, is said to be above. That Brahman is the root of this tree of transmigrating life. Shrutescha, urdhva moolo, avakshakaha, eto ashwatha sanatanaha. Kathopanishad 3:2:1. Although there is even a 6-1. Iti, Puranecha. In the Puranas also it is affirmed. In the Ashwamedha Parvam, the eternal tree Brahman has sprung from the unmanifest truth. Avyakta Moola Prabhavaha Tasya Eva Anugraho Chitaha Buddhiskandham Mayaschaiva Indriyantara Kotaraha. It rises high due to his blessing. And then Mahabhuta Vishakhascha Vishayai Patravan Satha Dharma Dharma Supushpascha Sukha Dukha Phalodayaha Ajivya Sarvabhutanam Brahma Vriksha Sanatanaha एतद् ब्रह्मवनं चैव ब्रह्मवृक्षस्य यस्य तत् एतत् चित्वा च भित्त्वा च ज्ञानेन परमासिना ततश्चात् atmaratim prapya tasman na vartate punaha. So cutting this one with the asi, the sword of knowledge, then one does not come back again, right? Atmaratim, with the bliss of the self, having gaining that, none returns. So it rises high due to his blessing. It consists largely of the branches of the intellect, the hollows of the sense organs. Buddhi skandamayaschaiva. Indriyantara kotaraha. Antara kotara. Mahabhuta, the five great elements. Vishakascha, the varied twigs. Vishayahi patravansata, the leaves are the sense objects. Its glorious flowers are dharma and adharma. Pushpascha, see? Fruits borne by this tree are pleasures and pains. Sukha dukkha phalodaya. On it depend all. See what a beautiful metaphor it is, right? This tree with the buddhi and then the various senses, sense organs, the objects of the senses, dharma and adharma as the flowers, and the fruit are pleasure and pain. On it depend all beings. This is also the forest of Brahman, consisting of that Brahman tree. Having cut it and split it with the supreme sword of knowledge and gaining the bliss of self, none returns therefrom. Now that's beautiful, right? Ityadi. Tam urdhvamulam samsaram mayamayam vriksham ahuhu. They say that this tree of transmigratory life with its root above is a riddle. Mahat ahankara tanmatradayah shakhaha. Mahat, the principle of the intellect, the equivalent of the buddhi in the cosmic macrocosm. Ahankara and ego and tanmatra, the subtle elements, adayah, etc. Shakhaha are the branches. Iva asya adha bhavanti iti, so I am adha shakha. This tree does not last till the next day even. Hence, it is called aswatha. It is both eternal and it is, in a sense, dying every instant. Na shvo api sthata iti ashvatha tam kshana pradvikmansinam ashvatham prahu kathayanti. The sages say that it does not last for even a second. Every moment it perishes. It is eternal as well, since the riddle of transmigratory life has been there from beginningless time. Avyayam samsara mayayaha anadikala pravrittatvat. So I am sansara vriksha avyayaha. Anadi ananta dehadi santanasrayaha. He suprasiddha tam avyayam. Etc. So it is well known as the ground of a beginningless and ceaseless stream of body, etc. Here is an additional attribute of this tree. Its leaves are the Vedic hymns. The term Chandas means the Vedic hymns that cover this tree of samsara, which is meant to manifest righteousness, unrighteousness, their causes and their effects. Rig Yajussama Lakshanani Yasya Samsara Vrikshasya Parnani Iva Parnani. Yatha Vrikshasya Parikshanarthani Parnani Tatha Vedaha Samsara Vriksha Rakshanarthaha Dharma Dharma Tad Hetu Phala Pradarshanarthatvat. He who knows this tree is, as explained, is the knower of the Vedas, one who knows the sense of the Vedas. Indeed, there is nothing else left, not even an iota to be known other than this tree of samsara and its root. Hence, the knower of all Vedas is omniscient. This declaration eulogizes the knowledge of the tree of samsara and its cause. Sarva Vedartha Vid iti Samula Samsara Vriksha Jnanam Stauti. Tata Tasya Etasya Samsara Vrikshasya Apara Avaya Kalpana Uchyate. Another way of picturing the parts of this tree is offered. This is verse 2, please.
अधश्चोर्ध्वं प्रसृतास्तस्य शाखा गुणप्रवृद्धा विषयप्रवालाः अधश्च मूल्यान्यनुसन्ततानि कर्मानुबन्धीनि मनुष्यलोके.
Thank you. Very nice. Adhascha urdhvam cha should be supplied cha after that. So both below and above. Prasritaha, they are spread. Tasya, this ones belonging to this. Shakha, branches. Guna pravruddha, because of the constituents. Vishaya pravala, sense objects are its shoots. Adhascha mulani, anusantatani, karma anubandhini, manushaloke. In the world of men, extend its roots that link up actions. Below is the sphere of living beings, from men to stationary objects like trees, and above, up to the sphere of the creator Brahma, extends the region of the fruits of knowledge and work, conforming to works, and the teachings of Shruti. Because remember, Pariksha Lokan Karma Chitan Brahmano. By observing these 7 lokas up to the Satyaloka of Brahma, Brahmalok, which are the products of karma or thought, right? Conforming to works. The branches of this tree, like those of any tree, extend. They flourish, fed by the constituents, sattva, rajas, tamas, their material causes. Sense objects, sounds, and so forth are the shoots, for like shoots, they grow from the branches. That is, the fruits of the actions of body, speech, and mind. So the branches of this tree are said to have sense objects as their shoots. The ultimate root, the material cause of this tree of samsara, has already been mentioned. Now they are pointed out the intermediate roots or causes, namely impressions left in the mind by the fruits of actions, such as attachment, aversion, raga, dvesha, right? Um, Atha idanim karma phala janita raga dveshadi vasana. So those impressions are the vasanas. Mulaniva, they extend below the ranges of beings like the roots. They conform to other righteous and unrighteous acts and engender consequences of a like nature. Appearance of beings in the human sphere, especially, is a result of these acts. It is well known that human beings are here to do works continuing from prior works. Yahatu ayam varnitaha samsara vriksha, of this tree of transmigratory life as described. Please, number 3.
न रूपमस्येह तथोपलभ्यते नान्तो न चादिर्न च संप्रतिष्ठा अश्वत्थमेनं सविरूढमूलम् असङ्गशस्त्रेण दृढेन चित्वा.
So this is a very interesting characteristic. Na rupam iti. Its form as described is not known for certain here at all. It has no end or no beginning. Na rupam asya iha tatha upalabhyate. That is not available. Na antaha na adihi. There is no end, there is no beginning. Cha sampratishtha. And no foundation. Ashwatham enam savirudha moolam asanga shastrena dridena chitva. So, asanga, it is non-attachment. Asanga shastra is a weapon of non-attachment. Dridena, this is strong. Chitva, in instrumental case, using this strong weapon of non-attachment, split this fig tree, Ashwatham, Enam, this one, Savirudha Moolam, with its well-nourished roots. When I was in my last place, we had to, there was um, a hedge uh, that had grown, and this hedge had grown very wild. Huh? And when I moved from the last place, I had to cut this hedge. Okay. So first I went and got, uh, kind of a handheld clipper, right? But pretty soon you could see that the branches were too fat for this clipper to go around, right? So then I went and got a saw, and, and, and then I sawed through a lot of the branches. The roots were even thicker. I mean, the root branches. So finally, I had to call somebody, and then they said, "Well, we will put chemicals and kill this." I said, "No, no, please don't do that because I don't want you to put chemicals into the ground." Uh, so then, in the end, there's a lot of effort to dig it out without chemicals, right? Um, so this is just an ordinary hedge, right? That's grown wild. It's amazing how nature is. If you let it go, right, it just becomes very, very well nourished and thick and fat. So think of our uh, mind with its vasanas and having had so many bodies before. So the root attachment must be very thick, right? Yeah, yeah. So much time has elapsed, and we don't know where this. At least in the physical tree, we could see where the root is and where the top is. I mean, the head was stout, but it was not infinite. It had grown out of control, but it had a limit, right? You could go and clip the top branches off, right? But this tree has no ending. Okay. And at least the hedge had a root. You could identify that it was a finite size root. It may be hard. You may have to dig for days, but it is finite, right? It's not like without an end. Okay. But this tree, we don't know where its beginning is, and we don't know where its end is, right? This must be a pretty different kind of challenge. What do you think? Hmm? Right? In fact, here is the beauty of our Sanatana Dharma. If nobody had come and told you this, you wouldn't even know it, right? Hmm? Right? It's only in the highly refined thought of the rishis that this wisdom itself could be gained by us, right? That, oh my God, once I get out of those animalistic actions that I do every day, this is actually, I'm part of a very thick tree. And this tree has been there forever. And it will go on forever unless I do something about it. Right? Okay. So this itself is the beauty of the Bhagavad Gita. This is the beauty of the thought. Because if the rishis had not blessed us with their knowledge, how would we even start? Right? Why wouldn't we even start? There's no need to start. Right? So this is a great blessing. Okay. So then, but Bhagavan is so gracious. Not only in the first two padas, he tells you that it's infinite and all it's got, then he says also the solution in one verse itself. Okay. Take this firm thing of non-attachment and go cut it. All right. Huh. So its form is described as not known for certain here at all, for it is like a dream. It's a water of the mirage or a city in the sky. It is fugitive. Therefore, it has no end, no fixity, no conclusion. Similarly, it has no beginning. Now, why do we say this, right? So, how many of you sometimes get obsessed with a thought in your mind? Raise your hands. Anybody? Okay. Is there anybody who has not been obsessed by a thought in their mind? So this is a very classic one, right? They say, try not to think of a pink elephant. And then what happens is the mind will never let go of the, how much ever you think of something else, the pink elephant comes up, right? It's a horrible seed to sow in the mind, right? So a lot of times what we're doing is we're fighting the mind, right? Something upsets us and it's so hard to get it out of the mind, right? And yet, can we say that this has any reality? There's no reality to it. A lot of times things that crop up in my mind, there's no reality, right? You're upset at somebody, right? Does that upset feeling have any physical? No, it doesn't. It's just a thought, right? And so many of our challenges and obstacles are those, right? And now, if you try to fight the mind, it's a lost cause. Very hard, right? Especially if you take uh, like a strong emotion towards it, you know. So, what do the wise say? I say, no, 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 don't do that, right? So, for instance, let's say you want to quit smoking, right? Should you start hating tobacco? No, it's a very bad thing. Don't go around hating something because if you try to hate it, it'll rebound at you. So the next time you break down and smoke, you'll hate yourself also, right? So strong emotion towards even evil is not recommended in yoga, right? We recognize that these are taints. There are some colorations of the mind, and they have to be brought to rest through wisdom, through uh, fixing the mind on something that is more pleasant, right? Substitution. Put something good in its place, right? This is the easiest way, right? Because even if you remove that unpleasantness, something has to come in. It's like mind is like what is the nature abhors a vacuum, right? Okay, mind also doesn't want to be quiet. Something will come into its place. So the smart way is to put something. If you want to kick a bad habit, put a good habit in its place, right? Replace it. Don't try to fight it. This is the wisdom of psychology also, right? So if you want to quit smoking, start playing a very vigorous game. If you play a very vigorous game, your lungs will start activating very strongly, and then you will hate to smoke. Because the next time you smoke, it will burn the fresh feeling in the lungs, and so slowly you get turned away from it, right? So identifying the root cause of the bad habit and replacing it with a good habit that is the entire antithesis of it will solve the problem, right? So, but it's like a mirage. It's difficult to fight the mind. The mind cannot be fought, actually. The mind can be guided. The mind can be given replacement habits. And through that, it can slowly be brought to rest. Hmm? And that's when the control comes. But the coming to rest must be preceded first by channeling it in the right direction. That we call dharana, right? Putting the concentration, fixing it on something good, which is image of the Lord, maybe a mantra, maybe a form of the Lord. These are very good ways to start channeling the mind. So, um, but this verse is at a slightly higher level. It is now talking about using this weapon of non-attachment. Absence of desire for children, wealth, renown, and fame, and then seek that status. So Bhagavan is taking a very high level approach here, right? Um, Asangaha, putra vitta lokaishanabhyah. Lokaisha is fame, renown. So this the standard things that people like, children, wealth, renown, and fame. He says develop a non-attachment to that. Vyuthanam, tena asanga shastrena dridena paramatmabhi mukhya nishchaya dridikritena. through sure orientation of the mind towards the Supreme Self. It has to be sharpened repeatedly. Punaha punaha viveka abhyasa ashma nishitena, on the stone of rubbing it on the wet stone of discriminative knowledge. Viveka abhyasa chitva samsara vriksham sabijam udhrutya. Then cut it and remove the samsara vriksha with its seed itself. Sabijam. Pull it out with the seed. This is the idea. Right? So therefore, Bhagavan here is giving the highest Advaita Vedantic approach of starting with the Vivekam, Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekam, repeatedly. So let's take each of these. Children. Children are a very jolly thing, right? Most people like to have children. Everybody likes to see a child. A child is a renewal of energy, right? It looks so sweet. They are so innocent. They are cute to play with. No doubt about it, right? They are fun, especially if they're not your children, because then they go away to be taken care of by somebody else. You can play with them for about 1 or 2 hours, goo goo gaga, and go away. They're the best kind. That's why grandparents are the happiest, because they can tell the parents, here's your child, now go take care of it. You have to clean it up, etc. You have to feed it. Right? So they can play with the child. Children are very nice. They're very innocent. They're very sweet, right? But then what is Bhagavan saying? Sure, yes. But they are also cause of pleasure and pain, right? When the child does what the parent wants it to do, it's pleasure. When the child does what the parent doesn't want to do, it's pain. Right? And there is no child that has yet been born that always does what its parent wants it to do. That child is non-existent. Okay. So it is mixed bag. Anyway, nevertheless, it serves a purpose of purifying the mind. And so it's a useful samskar. But now Bhagavan is saying a non-attachment. So even if one has a child, recognizing that that's okay. The child is also composed of the three gunas. It is composed of sattva, rajas, tamas. If it's a tamasic child, you may have to whack it. If it's a rajasic child, you may have to guide it. If it's a sattvic child, it will probably mostly understand what you're saying, and a few good wise words will put it in the right path. Right? But nevertheless, it's not a static child. As it goes through life, its guna balance is going to change. When the hormones develop in the teenage years, rajas is going to increase, right? The same child that was sweet and listening to you at age 5 and 6 is not the same at 15 and 16. It's not the child's fault. It's the gunas, right? The guna balance is changing, right? It's going to develop an ego, and the ego is going to have attitudes and opinions, and they may not agree with the parent, right? So there is no cause for getting overly excited about either the pleasure or pain. Is what it is. Right? Right? The gunas will play. There will be sorrow, for sure. The more the attachment, the more the parent is attached to, okay, I want my child to be a doctor. And the child hates medicine from the first day, is revolted by the notion of biology, wants to be a saxophone player. Okay. So the parent is thinking, how are you going to earn anything by learning to play saxophone? Saxophone players are all like very difficult. They're going to be starving. And that's what the child wants to do. What are you going to do? Okay. So the wise parent gives the advice and steps aside. Says, if this is your karma, if you're going to do this, you're going to do this. You're going to bear the fruits of it. If you go and play the saxophone, you won't earn money. And if you won't earn money, you may be poor. So that's your problem. That's all. Do it. On the other hand, you may become Sonny Rollins and you may be the greatest saxophonist of all time. And people may buy your records. That'd be fantastic. So that's also cool. That's great. Follow your passion. Why not? Right? So parent cannot predict what's going to happen to the child. Right? What if it is the greatest musician of all time? So the bottom line is one can transmit what one knows and leave it at that. Right? That is non-attachment. Right? It is not to say I don't care, but it's to say as long as sattva is high, I will offer the best I can in an attitude of service. in an attitude of helpfulness, and leave it at that. Right? That will be doing the duty as a parent. Right? And then the child can do what it wants to do. It will do what it wants to do once it's an adult. Right? And child similarly can take the good, sift the good, and take it like a swan, take the milk from the water and move on. Right? So non-attachment. So next one, please.
ततः पदं तत् परिमार्गितव्यं यस्मिन् गता न निवर्तन्ति भूयः तमेव चाद्यं पुरुषं प्रपद्ये यतः प्रवृत्तिः प्रसृता पुराणी.
Thank you. Tataha padam, that status, this Brahma padam, right? The status, the state that one wants to reach. Tataha padam, tat parimargitavyam. This is a tavya aniya compound. Tavya compound means must be. It has the sense of must be, has to be here. Laboriously sought. Parimargitavya. Yasmin gata, reaching where na nivartanti bhoya, there is no return. So this is the one-way ticket. Right? Okay. From that place of Atmic bliss, where there is no return, it should be sought, feeling, I take refuge. Tam eva cha adyam purusham prapadye. Tam eva cha adyam purusham prapadye. We say sharanam prapadye, right? I come to your refuge. So I take refuge in the primeval spirit. Yataha, from where pravrittihi has come this ancient process of Purani, prasrita, that is has emanated, right? Yataha pravritti prasrita Purani. So the primeval cause. So with the attitude that I am taking refuge in the primeval spirit, in this Purusha, right? The one sleeping in the city of 9 gates. I take refuge in this primeval. With that feeling, one must seek this status, this padam, laboriously. Then, katam bhutaha tat padam gacchanti iti. Equipped with what virtues do they attain to that status? Answer.
निर्माण मोह जित संग दोषा अध्यात्म नित्या विनिवृत्त कामाः द्वन्द्वैर्विमुक्ताः सुख दुःख संज्ञैः गच्छन्त्यमूढाः पदमव्ययं तत्.
Beautiful. Gacchanti amudhaha. Right? Gacchanti amudhaha. The non-dull ones. Undiluted. So, nirmana moha. Manam is a sense of self-importance. Without that, moha, delusion. So here, manam is translated as egoism also, which is fair. Jita sanga dosha, overcoming the flaws of attachment. It's kind of in a practical way, like I described earlier, of the parent-child relationship, right? Jita sanga dosha, overcoming the flaws of attachments. Adhyatma nitya, ever established in the inner science, spirituality, right? Adhyatmic knowledge, the true inner meaning. Vinivritta kamaha, free from lusts. Dvandvaihi, opposites, dualities. Vimuktaha, freed from the opposites, which are the sukha dukkha, pleasure and pain. Gacchanti amudaha, they go. Who go? The undiluted sages. Padam avyayam, they repair to that imperishable status. So already Bhagavan has said, why should I not have the feeling that I am doing? Because it's the gunas that play with the gunas. Even within me, the notion of I am doing comes from the guna itself, right? Tamas and rajas overcome and give us the feeling that I am the doer. And delusion, obviously. Jita sanga dosha, overcoming the flaws of attachments. Adhyatma nitya, vinivritta kama, free from lusts. Dvandair vimuktaha, sukha dukkha sangyehi, gacchanti amudaha, padamavya. Very nice. Any questions? This seems like a decent place to stop. We finished 6 verses only, but still. We have about 3-4 minutes. I thought we can take some questions.
So Dr. Shankar, I have a question on the so the tree that's mentioned,
Mhm.
is that referred to the individual jiva or the samsara? What is it actually referring to?
Everything, because it's a cosmic. He talks about Mahat, right? All creation itself.
Okay. Because from the mention of senses and mind and everything, it seemed like talking about a jiva, but that
Uh-huh.
is not the case.
No, it is all applicable to all, um, because of Brahmanda Pindadi Aikyam.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Was it thought provoking? Bhagavad Gita always is, right? That is the purpose. It makes you pause and think. Right? Is it having that effect?
Shankar,
Yeah.
this is more of a remark, but this idea that everything which we see or experience, everything is just the three gunas playing with each other. And, I mean, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. But whenever it's at the exact time and it's really important to know that, it just it evaporates. I mean, when something happens, if you are dealing with another person and you don't want to be judge their actions or be affected by them, at that exact point, I'm not thinking about this. But otherwise, it's there in the mind.
Very honest and very accurate. Uh, very true. Very true. And Bhagavan Shankaracharya talks about this. He says that when we are speaking to other people, or when we are listening to, say, some music or something like that, the mind gets robbed away from its awareness, right? In fact, he draws the analogy of a ball dropping down the steps of a stairs, right? Slowly, slowly, quickly it falls down one by one from the steps and descends into it. So this is correct. It is natural. But by repeated practice, right, it's another habit. Remember, we talked about habits, right? So every time the mind is brought back to that awareness, it does have an effect, most definitely, right? So first, in meditation. So in meditation, you don't have any external influences. In that state, you're constantly reminding yourself of these truths, right? Experiencing the truth. Then next one, when you are in satsang, right? It's still easier. We are still talking, but we're talking about the truth. Then in calm but nice conversations with other people also. And then in very agitated conversations, right? It will progress, right? Don't you agree?
Gee, but it's just in agitated conversations, it seems very distant to me.
It does seem difficult at a certain stage. But believe me that slowly, slowly, with practice, the mind changes, one's behavior changes, and it definitely has an effect.
Gee.
Very good. Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, shall we say Shanti Mantra and disperse? Om Tacham Yora Vrinimhe Gatum Yajnayam Gatum Yajnapataye दैवीः स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वं जिगातु भेषजं शन्नो अस्तु द्विपदेः शं चतुष्पदे ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste everyone. Very nice you could join. Have a lovely evening.